Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Azam Khan. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken begins a two-day trip to China to cool off tense Sino-US ties. A McDonald's employee attacks his manager with a knife in Western District. And the city bids an emotional farewell to two ducks in Victoria Harbour. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has met his Chinese counterpart in Beijing. Blinken's two-day trip to China is the highest-level visit by an American official in 5 years.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Beijing early this morning with an agenda to fix Sino-US ties, which have depleted to their lowest level ever. His eagerly awaited visit has the potential to set things rolling in the right direction for both countries. He met with Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang as officials from both delegations shook hands at the Diaoyutai State Guest House before diving into discussions to address a range of issues, including Taiwan, Ukraine conflict, and U.S.-led tech containment. Blinken is the most senior official from the Joe Biden administration to travel to Beijing. He said he hoped the trip will enhance communications between both sides so that intense competition does not veer into conflict. Blinken's earlier visit to Beijing in February was called off after an alleged Chinese spy balloon drifted into U.S. airspace. Sino-US ties went further south when Taiwan politician Tsai Ing-wen met with senior U.S. lawmakers in California. Experts say Blinken's visit will partly lay the foundation for a visit by President Xi Jinping to the United States later in November, where he is expected to meet U.S. President Joe Biden on the sidelines of the APEC summit.
Locally, in another shocking knife attack, a man wounded his manager in Western District this afternoon. The incident took place at a McDonald's outlet on Hill Road at around 3 p.m. An employee attacked the manager after an argument and fled the scene. Police later arrested the suspect. The victim was soaked in blood with injuries to his head. He was conscious and sent to Princess Margaret Hospital for treatment. Imported labor seems to be the only option to tackle the current manpower crunch affecting operations at the airport. The airport authority hopes that by the end of the year, flight capacity could return to 80% of pre-pandemic levels. Janice Lowe reports.
It's been nearly 6 months since Hong Kong reconnected with the world after COVID. But the number of travelers to the city has only recovered to half of pre-pandemic levels, while flight capacity is still down by 40%. Taking to the airwaves this morning, Fred Lam from the Airport Authority revealed that 20 overseas airlines wanted to expand their operations in Hong Kong. But the Airport Authority was unable to accommodate the requests due to the lack of ground crew. The Chief Executive Officer pointed out that the labor crunch has led to limited connectivity, pushing airfares higher, as there are insufficient flights to meet the demand. Aiming to ease the manpower shortage, the government has earlier unveiled its plan to employ 6,300 foreign workers at the airport. Lam expects the first batch of imported workers to join the local force by October. He hopes that by the next peak traveling season during Christmas, airfares could return to a reasonable level, and both visitors and flight capacity to return to 80% of pre-pandemic levels. Responding to the concerns that imported labor would compromise employment opportunities for locals, Lam said it would be the opposite. He said that under the scheme, experienced locals could be promoted to supervisory positions to overlook and train the foreign workers and at the same time enjoy a pay rise. For every imported worker in the aviation industry, the employers have to pay $400 to the airport authority each month. The amount would be used to compensate the traveling fee for local staff. Lam believes it would allow around 10,000 citizens to benefit from the measure by earning a $300 monthly travel subsidy. Janice Low, HKIBC.
The two giant rubber ducks said goodbye to the city after a parade in the harbor this afternoon. Organizers said they are leaving a week earlier than planned because of unexpected challenges. Chloe Wong has the story.
Despite heavy rain this morning, many people crowded Timber Park for one last glimpse of the two ducks on display in the harbor. One duck went on a 2-hour-long sea parade this afternoon, spending its last day swimming along Causeway Bay, Fortress Hill, Tsim Sha Tsui, and made a final stop at Wan Chai. The other duck will stay in the harbor till tomorrow morning. Justin said he saw the duck 10 years ago, and this time he was happy to come along with his younger brother. This man, who has become a father during the decade, brought his son to meet the ducks and hoped to create wonderful memories together. He said it might be another 10-year wait for the ducks to make a comeback, and by that time he could no longer carry his son, who would be 16 years old by then. The two ducks have been on display since June 9th, and one of them was deflated only a day after coming to the harbor. The rubber stretched due to the sweltering temperatures in the city, and there were concerns it would burst. It was fixed and towed back into the harbor a day later. Organizers said they are cutting the exhibition short after due consideration to the operating costs and unpredictable weather. One duck was deflated around 7 p.m. Chloe Wong, HKIBC.
The government hopes to help young families gain home ownership by reviving a scheme that allows private developers to build subsidized flats. By setting a minimum size for the majority of the flats, Housing Secretary Winnie Ho hopes the government can provide comfortable accommodation for a family of 4. Here's Janice Low.
Aiming to provide more subsidized homes for the public, the government has relaunched a scheme to allow private developers to build subsidized homes. They could either build on government land that would be put out to tender or build on rezoned private land. Speaking on a commercial radio program this morning, Housing Secretary Winnie Ho pointed out that not less than 70% of the flats in those developments have to be at least 375 square feet. With that minimum area, the government hopes to fulfill the needs of a 4-member family. Ho estimated that the developers currently hold 1,000 hectares of agricultural land. But she did not expect the land to be used up for building subsidized flats, saying that every developer has their own plans. Under the scheme, homes would be sold at 65% of the market price. The developers would employ professionals to assess the selling price, while the government would also seek advice from the Rating and Valuation Department. Upon getting approval from the housing minister, the developers must put the flats on sale within a month. Ho emphasized that the government would not purchase unsold flats. The developers could either sell those at a later time or pay the full premium before selling it at the market price. Janice Low, HKIBC.
A man sustained injuries to his head in a bar brawl early this morning. It is believed the 46-year-old got beaten up after getting into an argument with others in a bar on Wingfong Road in Kwai Fong. He was conscious and was taken to Princess Margaret Hospital for treatment. Police have classified the incident as a wounding case. Overseas, 41 people have now been confirmed dead in a savage attack on a school in western Uganda. 5 militants of a rebel group linked to the Islamic State entered the dormitories of Lubiriha Secondary School in the town of Mpondwe, roughly 400 kilometers west of the capital Kampala, setting fire and using machetes to slay the pupils. The Allied Democratic Forces, based in the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo, have been blamed, and a manhunt is underway. 6 students were abducted and taken away by the assailants. Leaders of 7 African nations met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in a bid to end the conflict in Ukraine. They made their plea on behalf of the whole African continent, which is facing food security issues due to the war.
A day after visiting Ukraine and meeting President Volodymyr Zelensky, a delegation of African leaders met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in St. Petersburg yesterday. The peace mission, made up of representatives from South Africa, Egypt, Senegal, Congo-Brazzaville, Comoros, Zambia, and Uganda, was specifically designed with a diverse balance, with members from different parts of the continent having different views on the conflict. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa warned of the impact the war has had on Africa, particularly on food security.
And we do believe that this is the time for both parties to negotiate an end to this war, because this war is causing a great deal of instability and harm to various countries around the world. And we as African countries are feeling the impact of this war.
Putin pointed out that only 3% of grain in the United Nations-backed deal goes to Africa, while the rest goes to Western nations. Putin praised Africa's balanced position on the war, but said Kyiv and its backers initiated the conflict in 2014. He said Moscow is open to negotiations, but Ukraine and its allies do not want to come to the negotiating table. Many African nations have long had close ties with Moscow, dating back to the Cold War, when the Soviet Union supported the anti-colonial struggles.
And finally, many families got together for Yamcha to celebrate Father's Day. Restaurants in the city reported a jump in business despite heavy rain in the morning. Chloe Wong reports.
Three generations of this family came together for Yamcha at this restaurant in Mongkok to celebrate Father's Day this morning. Mr. Yeung, the second son, said a total of 18 members of the extended family came to celebrate the occasion. His mother said they have come to this restaurant every year to celebrate Mother's Day and Father's Day. 3 generations of another family at the same restaurant said they were happy they could all finally come together, as 3 years of COVID restrictions prohibited large gatherings. Mrs. Chen said they were enjoying their time a lot today, as they seldom went out to dine because of the pandemic. Her husband said their whole family was delighted to be together once again. The morning section was packed with customers as they lined up at the dim sum counter to pick up their choices. The restaurant manager said today's business was way better than previous Father's Day's collections. He added that some customers came early because of the rain. Chief Executive John Lee shared a gift he received from his son on social media and wished everyone a happy Father's Day. Chloe Wong, HKIBC.
On to the weather now. Mostly cloudy with some showers and thunderstorms, along with sunny intervals in the afternoon. Temperatures will range between 27 and 31 degrees. Expect hot days with showers next week. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Sunday night. Join us for more news at 11:30. I'm Azam Khan. Thanks for watching and happy Father's Day. Good night.